So the question I'm asking is, I'll break this down. You've got the performance of the learning department. So the learning department has various amounts of budget, various amounts of people, and they have a task to go and do. Are they performing that task? That's the performance of the learning department. Your workforce also has tasks to go and do. You pay them salaries, and they have job descriptions, or they have things that they have to go and do, activities and tasks, and you can measure the performance of those things. The business itself also has performance. As a value chain, it has inputs, throughputs, and outputs, and the outputs are something to do with money usually. Now, the thing I'm trying to tease out is it's fine to measure the performance of the learning department. Pretty much every learning department in the world does that. It's also good, very good, to measure the performance of the workforce. And the thing I'm asking you about is, are you able to, or is it might be something that's on your to-do list or something on your roadmap, but relating the performance of the learning department and potentially the individuals to business performance. This is ROI. This is when we talk about ROI,
Sure,
we talk about performance consulting. That's the thing we're talking about.
Absolutely
So
right.
in that space, and this is the thing that you said was difficult, that I was saying, I don't find it to be that difficult, but where are you on that journey of relating the things you do in learning to the things that matter to the business?
Right. And I think, again, coming back down to performance, what is that, right? And talk about value, right? To me, value can mean multiple things. I break it down into, for example, saving time, making money, reducing expenses, right? For example, productivity, reputation is value as well, right? Reputation,
Yep.
which is a little bit harder to measure, right? So those are components of value that we need to understand first and foremost in order to then sort of map, are we, influencing, impacting those areas? So I did say that earlier, is that we're on that journey as an example. If it's about, building our consultative capabilities, right, as an organization, putting in training, resources, programs, whatever it looks like, right? We did it at our academy. We're continuing it on at local level learning days, etc. Being more consultative, as an example, for the account managers and sales. Now, that's a very direct approach if we think about what we're providing, to say, okay, we need to then measure those that have gone through that experience, whatever that might be, as an initiative, to then say, how did that influence the growth of an account? How did that influence, for example, new client acquisition? So I think that is something that's hardcore business driven, no doubt. And indeed, I did refer to that earlier, saying using, for example, simulations using AI, right, for the sales force is something they're building out. And that is something that I'm very eager, coming to your point, to measure what has been the result of that in their work. So I think that's very direct and hardcore, coming to your point. Now, I don't know if that's exactly what you mean, but that's the way I see it.
That's
as one
exactly
example.
what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's harder,
that's
though.
a
You see,
great
when you
example.
think about other jobs, though, it's typical, though, Ashwin, right? Account management, sales, these are typically areas that, people are looking at, oh, does it increase sales? Does it increase revenue? Did you grow the account? But other functions in the company, it's harder, right, to have the measurables in the same way. But that's maybe about more productivity. Are you more productive? Because we do look at that as a KPI, productivity, right? Productivity ratios. So that's an area that we can target, being more efficient, implementing new ideas, being more innovative, being more entrepreneurial because of the initiatives and programs that we provide from learning and development. A little bit harder to measure, as we talked about earlier, as to why as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything you've said, absolutely great example is sales. Everything else is slightly harder, but you can still look at the tasks and activities that you mentioned, right? So if on a very, very cursory level, but if we were to say that it takes somebody, 20 minutes to write up the minutes of a meeting, and now AI is able to do that for you at the click of a button, and somebody looks at it and it takes 5 minutes. Great, you've saved 15 minutes every meeting. So there are things like that which you can start to measure when it comes to knowledge work, of course. So absolutely that's where I would start if I was going to do this for you. If I was going to do that for you, I would be starting at the activity level. So to say, well, these are the tasks that aggregate into activities. Each one has a resource burden. How do we then aggregate that into something that's quantifiable?
And that started already. You're absolutely right. We started that efficiency level. Coming back to my point, although I didn't articulate it well enough, the fact of our learning department being the size it is today, we have increased our efficiency because of, for example, the integration of the latest technologies. That has helped us to be more efficient. And again, it's not just saying putting out more content out there because we're more efficient. but it allows us to then spend more time in maybe other areas to, focus more on that strategic side, that performance consulting side. So again, the efficiency that's being brought in with technology and with AI is definitely helping us, starting with us as a team. So you imagine, multiply that out in terms of what's happening in the business. With that is definitely happening, right? And some of that is also related to the programs and initiatives that we're putting out there. But you're absolutely right. We're missing an opportunity to measure that and quantify it and report it. And I think that's something that we'll very much look at as a result of this conversation.
I mean, this is, for those of you watching, first of all, this is fairly typical of the discussions that Avinash and I have. But the other thing is that when it comes to measurement, everybody that I speak with in the learning sector hesitates. It's a difficult thing. How do we do it? Where do we start? And what I've just said about measuring meeting minutes, it was a little cursory, but it's start somewhere. Start with what you know, and then build out your model accordingly. So that's probably a take home there. Before we wrap up, I'd like to just pick on the point of AI for a second. And that is that, we've talked about AI a couple of times in our past, and we've mentioned it a couple of times on this podcast as well. And so I have a readiness model. I can't remember if I sent it to you, but I will after this if I didn't. Readiness is a thing that we all need to kind of make sure that we have the things in place, the foundations to allow us to implement something successfully. From your perspective, the things that you've been implementing and the directions you've been taking in your business, have there been either any significant barriers? Because we've talked about opportunities a little bit around things like content and platforming. Have there been any significant barriers from your perspective where something was insurmountable? You had to go and do something differently because there was some reason why you couldn't implement the thing that you wanted to implement.
Related specifically to AI, you mean?
Yeah, AI.
I'm happy to say not really barriers, right? That was insurmountable because I started off the journey very early in 2017, looking at AI and working with a company out of London. And that really set the foundations of being, inquisitive. And the leadership was aware of that. They didn't pay much attention to it at the time. And that wasn't generative AI. So it was a different game, but it was AI and personalization and so on. Going back then, Netflix of learning stuff was always talked about, right? Context. And I think that opened the door to when I sort of looked into the latest technologies, this is about a year and a half ago, soon after generative AI came out and 2 years ago, I knew that we had to shift. And we were very quick on the mark from an L&D point of view, saying, this is what we need to implement. This is why. And I think that immediacy of already the leadership knowing that we'd work with AI, that they knew that we're always pushing boundaries from an L&D point of view. There was a trust there. They were open to listening and ultimately working closely with the CIO. That was critical. Who are the key stakeholders? The CIO, the data protection officer, and so on, right from the get-go made a huge difference. So rather than challenges, it's a matter of what did it take to make sure those challenges didn't exist or those obstacles weren't there. It was actually doing that, right? Just in terms of making sure the right people were involved at the right time. They were aware of what we were doing and why we were doing it. And that made all the difference. And by the way, from actually going through a process of literally only 2 months of looking at the solution providers, signing a contract, and 3 months later, it actually rolled out the platform, having had a 9-year legacy system in place. And in 3 months, we rolled out a platform globally in person at an academy with 300 leaders. So all of that was all due to everything I just mentioned about partnerships internally and stakeholders.
Yeah. Wow. That's a speedy one. And that's victory is where we will end today. Everything that Avinash has been saying, I'll put his LinkedIn in the comments below. Everything that he's been saying is, it gives a very rounded picture of, you need to have that credibility with your stakeholders. Everybody needs to be on board with what you're doing. You need to be reaching the parts of the organization that you need to with the interventions and the things that you change and measuring appropriately. So that's a very rounded view of what good looks like if you're in an enterprise, corporate, or a group function and you're leading, you're enabling your business. So thank you very much, Avinash, for today's conversation. If you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're watching this on Spotify, don't forget to follow the channel. Until next time.